Samsung isn't launching just one foldable this year, and the difference between these two devices is bigger than most people expected. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide has now surfaced with a major camera compromise compared to the standard Fold 8, but the surprising part is that this decision may actually make more sense than chasing higher specs. And once you look at the full picture, Samsung's strategy starts becoming very clear. The biggest distinction starts with the main camera. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Wide is expected to use a 50-megapixel primary sensor with an f1.8 aperture instead of the 200-megapixel system found on the regular Fold 8. That smaller sensor setup is reportedly the same class of hardware used in the standard Galaxy S26 and S26 Plus. Meanwhile, the normal Fold 8 moves into true Ultra territory with a much more premium camera approach. On the standard Fold 8, Samsung is reportedly using a 200-megapixel main sensor paired with an f1.7 aperture, matching the level of the Galaxy S26 Ultra and even last year's Z Fold 7 flagship setup. On paper, the difference between f1.7 and f1.8 sounds tiny, almost meaningless, but in actual low-light situations, that gap can become noticeable. The Fold 8 Wide is clearly giving up some ground when it comes to flagship-level photographic performance. At the same time, this doesn't suddenly make the Fold 8 Wide a bad camera phone. Anyone who has spent time using a Galaxy S26 or S26 Plus already knows how capable Samsung's 50-megapixel f1.8 sensor can be in daily use. Photos still come out sharp, balanced, and reliable in most situations. The issue here isn't quality. It's simply that Samsung is positioning one model above the other, and the camera hardware reflects that difference. What makes this more interesting is what Samsung decided not to downgrade. Both the Fold 8 and the Fold 8 Wide are expected to share the exact same 50-megapixel ultra-wide camera with an f1.9 aperture. That matters because it represents a serious leap over the Fold 7, which only used a 12-megapixel ultra-wide sensor. So, while the wide model loses ground on the main shooter, it still gains a major improvement in another important area. And that ultra-wide upgrade is not some mid-range component either. Reports suggest Samsung is using the same 50-megapixel ultra-wide hardware found on the Galaxy S26 Ultra. That instantly changes the conversation around the Fold 8 Wide, because it means Samsung didn't simply cut corners across the board. Instead, they seem to be carefully choosing where to scale things back and where to keep flagship-level features fully intact. Then there's the competition Samsung is clearly watching. Apple's first foldable iPhone Ultra is rumored to launch with two 48-megapixel rear cameras. Megapixels alone never tell the full story, but Samsung's dual 50-megapixel setup on the Fold 8 Wide still puts it in a strong position against Apple's upcoming foldable. On imaging alone, this device is not entering the market as a weak alternative. It is aiming to stay directly in the fight. For selfie cameras, there appears to be no separation between the two Samsung foldables. Both models are expected to carry identical 10-megapixel front-facing cameras, including one placed on the main inner display and another on the outer cover screen. So if you were expecting Samsung to downgrade the front camera experience on the wide model, that doesn't seem to be happening. The bigger differences show up once you move over to the displays. The standard Galaxy Z Fold 8 is expected to feature an 8-inch inner display alongside a 6.5-inch cover screen. The Fold 8 Wide, however, shifts toward a different direction with a 7.4-inch internal panel and a 5.4-inch outer display. Samsung is clearly experimenting with two very different form factors here. One stays closer to the traditional Fold identity, while the other appears designed around a shorter and wider overall experience. That means the choice between these phones may end up being less about raw specifications and more about how you actually use a foldable every day. The standard Fold 8 keeps the taller, familiar layout Samsung users already know. The wide model changes the proportions completely, pushing toward a broader design that could feel very different in the hand. And depending on your preferences, one approach may instantly make more sense than the other. Under the hood, though, Samsung isn't really separating them much at all. Both devices are expected to run the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy processor, and both should offer 12 and 16GB RAM configurations. The Fold 8 Wide is also rumored to launch with a dark green hero color option, although it's still unclear whether Samsung plans to market that shade differently from the standard Fold 8 lineup. pricing could end up being the biggest reason this strategy works. Nothing has been confirmed yet, but the smaller displays, reduced main camera hardware, and rumored battery difference all suggest the Fold 8 Wide may launch at a noticeably lower price. Some leaks have floated a figure around $1,600, which would place it far below Apple's foldable iPhone Ultra, currently expected to start near the $2,000 range. Samsung may still need to make a few additional compromises to fully hit that target price, but based on current leaks, those cuts are not obvious yet. And that's what makes the Fold 8 Wide so interesting right now. It doesn't look like a cheaper fold in the traditional sense. Instead, it feels like Samsung is building a second foldable identity entirely, one designed around balance rather than maximum specifications at any cost. So, when you step back and look at everything together, the Fold 8 Wide starts making a lot more sense. It brings a major ultra-wide upgrade over the Fold 7, stays competitive against Apple's foldable camera setup, introduces a unique form factor, and could land at a much more approachable price. The reduced main camera may not be a weakness at all. It may simply be Samsung's way of finally making foldables more accessible to a wider audience.